Hello, everybody. So today will be, the 12th and final vlog within this channel. More specifically, lastly, today I'll be talking about within chapter 14 of Rhetorical Act and chapter 2 of Reading Pop Culture, of course, that being just a little more real life examples of the overall theories and concepts within Rhetorical Act. But overall, these two chapters were about the overall process of essentially doing the rhetoric, essentially attempting to portray a new rhetoric or the changes or adjustments that needed to be made during doing that. And then, of course, Reading Pop Culture just offered real examples of the different media sources doing exactly that. More specifically, they have to deal with the change in the views of how women or transgender people are portrayed. Getting into it, the one of the first more important connections I made within chapter 14 when Rhetorical Act was the concept of rhetorical hybrids, or more specifically, rhetorical deviance. I found this to be pretty interesting. The author references a speech done by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. How it essentially, rhetorical deviance, what it essentially is in order to portray a rhetoric that, say, may not be as progressing as well as you would hope it would, what you essentially do is create a almost separate rhetoric that is so unconventional or different from the original one, or how it essentially usually is done. It serves as just a tool to get someone's attention, to break the cycle, almost similar just to as if you were a kid, you're just blurting out something just absolutely random. So your mom or dad, whoever it is, stops whatever they're doing, gets their attention, almost just out of curiosity of what was that, and then that's when it kind of sparks the next steps into actually portraying the full version of the rhetoric. Secondly, within chapter 14 of Rhetorical Act, specifically, one concept I found to be interesting was the apologetic genre, or this concept of apologia. What it essentially is when, like, say, a speech or some kind of rhetoric that is trying to be portrayed, it involves some kind of self defense tactics or some kind of image repair. So, in that, it essentially, of course, happens when something bad happens, someone wants to change the perception of them from previous events. Of course, it's focused heavily on the past, on past experiences, past cases, whatever. Like you said something a couple weeks ago, and overall, its efforts are to change already made up minds, already made up views on whether that person is essentially good or not, whatever it may be. And then lastly, one the example that I found a little more connective with the chapter in Rhetorical Act, was the essay done by Ariel Levy. Uh, More specifically, she wrote about the imagery of women within the media over time, and this rise in population of a more raunchy portrayal of women and how it evolved to that. Overall, it definitely representable of how the women's culture is viewed over time, of course, within even just recent-ish history within media sources. The overall thinking of women's culture has changed, so the portrayal of such has to change as well, of course. With the culture changing, the media needs to show it, and essentially what they're doing is they need to, in a way, in order for their own satisfaction, they need to essentially control that change, whether it be slow it down, whether it be enhance it, or whatever it may be. But of course, Ariel Levy explains that while it has changed almost essentially for the better, a little more representative of what the overall thinking is, it is still not accurate. Of course, it is still coming from media sources, so it is still limiting in its opportunities of portrayal. And then, of course, because it is within the movie industry or media industry, it is, of course, dramatized. Overall, the connection between these two chapters was, of course, that media does have a great influence on the overall changing of views within society. They can either spark the change, they stop the change altogether. It never really usually is supporting the change. They usually have some kind of essential control over the overall, I guess, speed of the change. And then, of course, the societal views influence that at the bottom level, and then the media kind of takes it upon themselves to take it one step further and essentially control how that change is actually happening. And then, of course, going forward, it's hard to, of course, influence how the media portrays certain things based on the overall feeling or thoughts within the society itself. So, of course, we just have to kind of be aware of what actual change is happening within society, and then almost compare and contrast that to what we see throughout the media, which one's accurate, which one essentially the media shows which change should happen, which one's accurate, whatever it may be. That way, we're more aware of how accurate essentially the media is. Overall, I found definitely this vlog to be pretty interesting. Both books, all the chapters definitely be interesting, definitely easily applicable to a more modern audience, and it definitely was insightful as far as how rhetoric is done, how the audience plays into that, how each and everyone's views play into that as well. So hopefully, it was a very insightful for vlog for the audience, I guess. So for the last time, I guess, have a good one.